Tarkov built extraction shooters. Arc Raiders may have mainstreamed them, and Marathon might be missing the point. Extraction shooters are one of the most fascinating genres in gaming right now. They're the only games where you can spend hours putting together the perfect kit, load into raid, hear one footstep, and suddenly feel your heart skip a beat. These games drop you into hostile places where every sound and every decision matters. And sometimes the smartest move is to just quietly back away from another player and pretend you never saw them. If you've played extraction shooters, you know exactly what I'm talking about. This genre has produced some incredible experiences. Games like Escape from Tarkov, Showdown, and Arc Raiders has shown how powerful this formula can be. Oppressive worlds, unpredictable raids, and stories that players create themselves. But something interesting is happening to the genre right now. Extraction shooters appear to be splitting into two different directions. One direction is the brutal, hardcore survival experience. The other is the more social adventure style that Arc Raiders has pioneered. And then there's Marathon, which seems to be heading somewhere right in the middle. And I'll be honest, I'm not totally sure that's a good place to be. When people talk about extraction shooters, everything starts with Escape from Tarkov. Tarkov didn't just build a genre, it created a feeling. You spawn into raid with gear you've spent hours earning, and suddenly every sound matters. A door opening in the distance, footsteps upstairs, the rustle of a bush outside. If you've played Tarkov, you know the feeling. You hear one sound, and suddenly you're slow walking around corners, gun at the ready, not even blinking. Because if you die, you lose everything. Your gun, your armor, your backpack, your loot. Sometimes an entire afternoon disappears because one guy had slightly better aim than you. And yet, that tension is exactly why Tarkov became so compelling. The world feels dangerous, hostile, and unforgiving. You don't really play Tarkov, you survive it. And then there's Hunt Showdown, which might have the best atmosphere of any multiplayer shooter ever made. Seriously, the sound design alone is unbelievable. Crows taking off in the distance, floorboards creaking in abandoned barns, gunshots echoing across the swamp. You can practically map the entire world just by listening. The game doesn't need to tell you it's dangerous. You feel it immediately. Rotting buildings, foggy swamps, strange creatures lurking somewhere in the distance. It's one of those games where the world itself creates tension, and that atmosphere becomes part of the gameplay. But one of the most interesting games in the genre right now is Arc Raiders, because Arc Raiders asked a very different question. What if extraction shooters didn't have to be these brutal, hardcore, niche games? Arc Raiders lowers the stakes. You can go into raid as a free kit with no cooldown. Losing gear isn't catastrophic, and something fascinating happens when the pressure drops. Players behave differently. Instead of instantly shooting one another, sometimes they just talk, ignore each other, or awkwardly stare at each other for 5 seconds like, "Are we chill?" And the result is something really unique. Weird encounters, unexpected alliances, moments where nobody's quite sure what's about to happen. And the world supports that feeling too. Arc seem to have a mind of their own, combined with the masterfully crafted aesthetic, the strange, quiet, sci-fi wasteland. It's incredibly easy to get lost exploring it. And when you look at these games together, something interesting starts to appear. The identity of these games becomes pretty clear. Tarkov feels like a survival simulator. Hunt feels like a gothic horror game. Arc Raiders feels like a sci-fi adventure, and Marathon feels like it's trying to qualify for an esports league. The extraction genre seems to be splitting into two different directions. One direction is the hardcore survival experience. High stakes, punishing losses, oppressive worlds. That's the Tarkov and Hunt lineage. These games are stressful, they're tense. Sometimes they're borderline terrifying. But that's exactly why people love them. And then there's the other direction, the one Arc Raiders has experimented with. Lower stakes, more exploration, more social interaction. Instead of pure survival tension, the focus shifts towards the adventure inside the raid, the weird encounters, the unpredictable moments, the stories players create themselves. And judging by the reception Arc Raiders has gotten, there's certainly a huge audience for that approach. And then there's Marathon. Now before anyone gets mad in the comments, let me say this clearly. I'm not rooting against this game. Bungie makes incredible shooters. The gunplay will almost certainly feel amazing. But when I look at the extraction shooter genre right now, I see those two very different directions forming. Tarkov feels like a collapsing war zone. Hunt feels like a haunted swamp. These environments are oppressive on purpose. The atmosphere makes you uncomfortable. But Marathon doesn't really seem interested in crafting that kind of pressure. Instead, it leans much more towards competitive combat. Fast movement, hero abilities, aggressive player encounters, which makes the experience feel less like survival and more like a competitive shooter that happens to have extraction mechanics. But the interesting thing is, Marathon also doesn't seem to be going in the other direction, because Arc Raiders proved something really important. Extraction games don't need to be miserable to work. Lower the stakes, lower the gear fear, and something fascinating happens. Players start behaving differently. They hesitate, they talk, they negotiate. Sometimes they just walk away. These strange, unpredictable encounters become the heart of the game. But that kind of environment only works when combat isn't the only optimal decision. And Marathon seems to heavily reward PvP, which means players won't hesitate. They won't negotiate, they won't walk away, they'll just shoot. Because the game is incentivizing them to. And then there's the atmosphere question. Let's look at the most successful extraction shooters. Tarkov, Hunt, Arc Raiders, all of them have incredibly strong world identities. You want to explore these places. You want to see what's over the next hill. Marathon's aesthetic is different. Very sleek, bright neon colors, clean sci-fi environments, which looks cool, but it does kind of look like a futuristic sports drink commercial. Let's be honest. And when the world itself doesn't create tension, the game has to rely much more heavily on combat to generate excitement, which again pushes the experience towards competitive PvP. And that's really the big question here surrounding Marathon. Not whether the gunplay will be good, it almost certainly will be. The question is whether it will capture the magic that makes extraction shooters special. The tension, the atmosphere, the strange unpredictable stories that happen between players. Tarkov has that, Hunt has that, Arc Raiders has that. Marathon just hasn't shown yet how it plans to create these moments. And that's what makes it so strange, and a little confusing to be honest. Extraction shooters are still evolving. Tarkov proved the concept. Hunt showed how powerful atmosphere can be. Arc Raiders showed the genre could also work with lower stakes, more social interaction, and bring in huge audiences doing so. Right now, the genre feels like it's branching into different directions. And to be fair, Marathon might end up proving everybody wrong. Because at the end of the day, if the game is good, the game is good. But as someone who loves the genre, I can't help looking at the things that made Tarkov, Hunt, and Arc Raiders special, and wondering how Marathon plans to capture that same magic. If you've gotten this far in the video, thank you for watching. I know this is a super different style of video than I normally make. I just figured I'd switch things up a little bit, share my opinion. Thank you for watching.